And I hear the dogs.
Gracie. Quit barking.
It's okay. It's okay. We're used to puppy dogs.
Yeah. She's looking in the window barking at us like, hey, let us in, right?
Welcome to Scuttlebutt Podcast. I'm Rich, and today I have a very special guest, a longtime friend, Greg Jonson of Dawson Creek, BC, and you work for Corlanes Sporting Goods, and you're mostly in the back doing the gunsmithing and that, but we'll get to that in a little bit. How long have we known one another now?
Oh, it's getting to be probably 12 years, I bet.
I'll betcha. Yeah, I know, because there was one of the guys there in the shop, his kid was showing me his son shot a mule deer this year, and I remember when that little guy was born.
I know. It's actually kind of, it's a strange feeling when you're, same thing when I started at Corlanes. There was young kids in there, I was setting them up with archery and stuff for their first bows, and now they're all working jobs. They're 25 years old. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't think I age all that much, but it's like, yep. I've been on the payroll for 20 years now, pretty much.
I have always said that, people talk about how their kids make them old, and I say, it's not my kids that makes me old. It's when I run into my buddy, and I remember when we went out and got drunk when the little guy was born, and now the kid's getting married, and that makes me old.
Oh, yeah. No, and when your own kids are, they're in high school, and you're just like, holy, where's time go?
It does. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and here's where I'm going with this. In today's world, one of the biggest complaints that everybody has when they go into retail or a store or whatever, and the guy behind the counter knows nothing. They're looking for these people to be experts, and that's just not happening in today's world. Well, I'm going to prove to you that Greg has the bona fides, but how did you start?
Well, pretty straightforward transition. I'd finished up in school and everything, and my parents were separated since I was young. So my mom lived on the island, and my dad lived up north. So probably around grade 4, I headed up north. But during the summers, I'd always work down on the island and just pick up a job. I worked on contract dive boats a lot and in the fishing industry down there and what have you.
When you say the island now, a lot of these folks...
Vancouver Island.
Island, okay.
On Vancouver Island, then on the Gulf Islands, like a small island called Quadra Island. So I'd go down there, beautiful summers, of course, great place to be a teenager growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'd go down there and visit and get a good summer job. And then in the falls, I'd always work for my dad farming, right? So always had lots of stuff to do. And then once I graduated and everything, I, kind of finished up down there. And the draw of the north was way, way heavier, right? Down on the island, starting out, I find it's a lot harder to get a foothold there, as far as jobs, money, perspective, and then, hunting and fishing, a lot more people and less things to pursue, so to speak. So
kind of crowded there.
Yeah. On the small islands, it isn't bad, but it's still not so much of the target audience is actual hunting type people, right?
Well, we got friends that live on the very south tip of the Vancouver Island, and we go visit them once or twice a year. I'm still astounded at the people there. It's such a different lifestyle from us in the north, like you say.
Yeah,
it's very, very different lifestyle. They have different concerns about things than we do, and I think it would be a hard place to fit in.
It is and it isn't, but there's there's a less of a niche for our outlook on things, or if you always feel weird talking about hunting or whatever when you know that a couple of people in the room are absolutely against it, even though they're would be considered your friends or family acquaintances and things like that. So you got to always kind of play your cards a little closer to your chest, which is not the way it's supposed to be. A guy should be happy and proud with some of the moments and memories you create in the field, right?
So your dad farmed up here?
Yeah.
Okay, in Dawson Creek, BC?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you worked for him on the farm, and you went to school here?
Yes. Yeah, pretty much everything since grade 4 on, I lived up here and went to school through here. So, yeah, started out of town at Parkland School, which is like a 90-kid school at best. And then bust into town. I probably had the longest bus run in all of BC, I swear. I spend more time on the Yellow Submarine than anything else.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. On the bus at 10 before 7, and you didn't get home till about 4:45.
Wow, that's a long day.
Yep. A lot of time to get in trouble on the bus, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, but that farm life, being a kid on the farm, I mean, you learned how to be independent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Inventive.
Yep.
and trouble was not unknown.
Yeah.
So when did you, now you say you've been on the payroll at Corlanes for 20 years. So when did you start there?
In basically late November of 1999.
No kidding.
Yeah. So, long time ago.
Rod Schramm was one of the owners, and he told me a story where this is when we first met you. You'd left the room, and he told me about how you started there, and you were just started. I think you were like a shop boy, and you swept up and you stocked shelves and all that. But he said, here's the cool part. He says the kid lives outside of town. He hitchhikes to town every day, and he's never ever been late for work.
Yeah. And they ask me now, are you ever late for work? I'm like, all the time. And I have a truck and and yet I could hitchhike from 26 miles out of town and I'd be there before the shop opened every day.
Yeah.
And I'd hit the highway at like 8:00, works at 9, and it's a half-hour drive,
Yeah.
and I'd never miss it, ever.
So you must have had some of the same people pick you up when it came to hitchhiking?
Yeah, there was a couple of, one of my friend's dads who worked at the college. If he was coming through, I'd catch him now and again because he kind of come through at about 8:30, so he'd be my last ditch ride, but he'd pick me up often. But surprisingly, random people, like just droves of them.
Yeah, that's 20 years ago. That doesn't happen today.
I was almost thinking of cutting the bottom out of a jerry can, and then I could put my lunch kit in it. Then you always look more desperate. They always pick you up then, right? Because you need gas, right?
Exactly.
I figured that would be a slick trick. And winter was the best hitchhiking because everyone felt sorry for you, so it was perfect. Yeah. Guaranteed rides.
So you started there in working as stocking shelves and that. And when did you decide to move on?
It was kind of a retail part, and also archery was in its infancy there. They stocked a few different things, and I had bow interests and some bow experience and everything previous to that. So really, one of the main things was growing their archery department. So it started, at retail sales, and then, here's a budget, buy some equipment, start building their archery center up. And I would say in the 4 years that we had archery, we probably grew it 6 times. It started with me, and then it got so big. Then another guy, John, come to work, and we ran that archery real good. And during the archery, we'd be doing tuning of bows, all that kind of stuff. And then I part-timed back and forth with the gun shop as well, assisting there in different features and so on and so forth. And then it just got so busy in the gun world that we hired another guy to kind of do archery, and then myself and John basically almost went straight full-time gun building. So it really was quite dynamic. I mean, it come from all sorts of different sources.
So meanwhile, in your personal life, your personal side, you were hunting. You became a very serious hunter. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I kind of had the bug at fairly young age, of course. My dad hunted very little, just here and there. But my Grandpa Gordy, which I call my Grandpa Gordy, but he's just my dad's good friend, longtime friend. He was a big influence, and my grandpa as well, because he was a commercial fisherman for years, and really he'd come into southern Alberta and they'd pheasant hunt and waterfowl hunt a lot, and then just hunt on the island or wherever it kind of took him. So the bug was there a long time ago. I just liked the outside, whether you were chicken hunting or doing anything. It was just more the travel, scenery, etc., which is more of the lure than anything. I mean, you're probably a little more bloodthirsty as a kid, You always wanted to bring something home no matter what, but...
Well, it's funny because I can remember when my brother and I were kids. And, I mean, back then, I'm just about 60 now. Back then, I mean, it was nothing. They'd hand you 22s and a box of shells, or they'd hand you pellet guns. I can remember pellet guns. Sylvia, I think the brand name was. And I think you got 500. There was a tin. There was 500 pellets in a tin. We each one have. We could spend all day, and with that, not get in any trouble. But I mean, you're practicing, you're shooting, you're becoming a very adept marksman with a very anemic gun. I don't know that it would break skin on a person if you were to be shot with it. You know, they're not like the pellet guns of today, but all the same. You were developing a lot of skill, a lot of stalking of game. We killed a lot of squirrels and chickens and rabbits and that kind of stuff with those old pellet guns, and spend a whole day doing it.
Oh yeah, no, I legitimately had the Daisy Red Ryder BB gun, and pretty much I'd get off the bus, grab my gun, and I had a dog. We called it Fatso. It was a Sheltie Corgi cross, so it was a short leg kind of round thing. But it was a dynamite bird dog. Like no formal training or anything, just dynamite.
A Sheltie Corgi cross, and it was a bird dog.
Oh, yeah. Grouse. It would flush them up, and it would bark at them in a tree, and they would stay there and just stare at the dog. And I would click that lever from 2 to 100 times, and finally that grouse would fall out of the tree. I'd hit him somewhere where it would actually do some damage, because if you hit him in the body, bounce off him.
Yeah.
And that's... I spent a lot of time hunting grouse with a BB gun and my little dog.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
That dog should have tried herding them. I mean, with its background is,
Pretty much. But retrieve and everything.
No kidding.
Not a day's training. Just we were out. My dad. We had a lot of sharptail on our property. And so we were out there, and it was always more sporting. We had a single shot 410 cooey. That's all we'd hunt the sharptail with.
Yeah.
Because really, you didn't want to shoot a lot of them, because we had probably 60 or 80 birds on the farm.
Yeah.
So you'd only shoot 5 or 10 a year. That's it. So you'd go out for a little push, and you'd flush them, and 410 single shot. That's all you got.
Yeah.
Because you just keep following around, and it's an all-day event, but super fun. And yeah, you'd bang them out of there, and that dog, bring them back to you. It wouldn't fetch a stick, nothing, but it would pick up a grouse and bring it back to you.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I can remember one time, actually it was pretty common, but you'd get squirrels in the granaries, right? And so you can't shoot them even with a 22 short, because you'd put a hole in the granary. So we'd take and pull a lead bullet out, and we'd use a wax crayon. Now, there was only one brand, and I don't even remember the brand today. It was a skinnier crayon than the regular ones, and you had to whittle it down a little bit so that you could shove it into the into the barrel and get it to see. I mean, we were kids, right? So
oh yeah,
you had no idea what kind of stuff
Safety,
you were.
whatever.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's just wax.
Nobody put an eye out, but yeah, you could actually shoot a squirrel. I mean, you're shooting. This
point
is for
blank.
me to you're point blank inside a granary and that, but you could shoot a squirrel and it would kill a squirrel and it wouldn't go make any damage to the granary.
Yeah, maybe you should have phoned me up with that trick, because there was a lot of holes in our granaries. A lot.
So, as you got older, then you moved more into big game hunting. What was your first big game animal?
Mule deer buck.
Mule deer buck.
Yeah, that was the first solo one. Me and my grandpa Gordy, same thing. My dad's, we're farming, right? Harvest is going on, or busy moving grain around, because our season used to open up November 1st to 21st. So it was always kind of tidy up time there. You're getting everything put away for the winter, so always busy. And yeah, every chance it'd be like 4 o'clock. I'd be like, let's go hunting quick, sneak away, get away from work. And then, I remember tootling them down back on the bottom end of our property. And there was this mule deer buck head in this willow tree, working it over, and finally lift its head up. It had about a 1.5 inch fourth point, and I'm like, it's legal, hey? So stealthily hopped out of pretty much the diesel truck, and I was been a tractor. And my grandpa Gordy had a 7x57 Husqvarna featherweight.
Yep.
With a fixed 6-power Leopold, and I still remember, I drew on the deer, and it walks out in front of us. I mean, it was 25 yards. And I just look, and all I see is hair. It's a complete hair blackout, right? So find a leg. Oh, yeah, that's a front leg. Move up, bang. Heart shot. Just worked out perfect, of course. And smiled ear to ear. It's probably a 125-inch buck, but, I mean, it was awesome, right? Because I did my core, so I had my official own tags and licenses and
Right.
everything. Before you had to use your dad's tags and get your junior license and everything like that. So,
Yeah.
that was my first year with my own license and tag, and that was pretty. Well, it was super exciting, right?
Yeah.
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 Down to the butcher shop, about 1,000,000 pictures. It's pretty good.
That first animal is very cool. I remember my first two. It wasn't a deer, it was a moose, but same idea. It was like a very small bull and all that, but it was the biggest one in the world that day, right?
Oh, you couldn't take it away. I can tell you that. Yeah.
The thing about it though is that I mean it just ignites a fire, doesn't it? It makes it that you that much more determined. And what a lot of people don't understand is that it doesn't make you more determined to shoot a bigger one or shoot a more of a trophy or anything. It's just that connection to the animal, and for us it was to the meat. Like I mean that food that's there is just so important. And back then it was really important. I mean I was just about married before I ever ate any farm raised beef. I mean,
Yeah.
if you'd have looked up, Jack Pine Savage in the dictionary, there'd have been a picture of me in there, and me and my brother,
Oh yeah. No, and my dad was more of a fan if we shoot an early season moose in any bull season. That was the best, right?
Yep.
So that's really what, as I was growing up, that's what you hunted for. Because it was before you started farming and mucking around. It was in August.
Yeah.
Because it used to open August 15th to the 31st for any bull, kind of at that time. And, you'd shoot a nice young bull in the canola or, in the pea field or whatever. And, I mean, you can't beat that meat. It's the best there is. And then I really like deer, right? I thought that was just the best trophy. You'd see them everywhere. And then, just them bucks running around chasing does. That was the most exciting.
So mule deer or whitetail?
A little bit of both. Like the farm I was at was mixed. Early on, tons of mule deer, and then with a few different winter die-offs, more and more whitetail kind of moved in.
Oh,
so
okay.
then it was a 50-50 mix, and now our mule deer population's pretty sad comparative to what it was in the heyday, and the whitetail. They winter better. I mean, they're just more resilient, hands down.
So do you think it's the winters that's being hard on the mule deer?
That, and we had a few seasons there where they were just very liberal bag limits too. During bad winter years, then 3-point season come in, then excessive doe harvest too, and the population just has never really rebounded from that.
We had that kind of crazy stuff too, where like in the mid 2000s, like 2004, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, no, but the winter of 6, 7, it was terrible, and then there wasn't much in 7, but that 4, 5, 6, just incredible, and they went crazy because there was mule deer everywhere. If you bought a buck tag, they gave you 3 doe tags. This is in year 2006. 3 doe tags they gave to you. So I mean, it was crazy, and well, there's no wonder now that we have trouble with our.
Yeah. No, the winter plays a huge role, and if it's a bad winter, I mean, pull back on the reins.
Part
Shorten
of that
the
is
seasons.
Part of that is that mule deer are more browsers than whitetails, and a mule deer can actually starve to death living in your bale yard. There's some enzyme or something that they need in their gut to be able to get enough nourishment out of alfalfa hay in order to survive. And I have a neighbor there has a big bale yard, and that one winter, it wasn't, I don't know, it was a few years ago now, we had about 10 feet of snow, and he had 40 some mule deer die right in his bale yard. And that was the first that I came to understand that they couldn't survive on that, where the whitetail can't. The whitetail can survive on alfalfa.
Why do you think they don't raise mule deer for trophy harvests like in Saskatchewan and Alberta on game farms?
Right.
Because they need that wide array of browse.
Yeah, and they
just don't do good.
That's part of it now, where we're getting so much more cropping being done. You know, you're losing all those bush lines and that we used to have, and that's hard on the mule deer.
Mm-hmm. It's a different, yeah. If you got lots of weeds in your fields and everything, which nobody does anymore,
No.
you know, there was a mixed array. But if you're not on the breaks of a river or lots of coulee land around it, absolutely. I mean, your transitions between fields are less and less. You know, there is no green space between fields.
No.
You know, you get the odd fence line or windbreak type scenario. You know, your farmyard is probably your biggest treed area in most of these spots, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're in British Columbia here. All kinds of big game to hunt. So you moved on from the mule deer.
Yep.
You moved in moose and elk and whitetail and
Everything. Yeah.
grizzly bear.
Yeah, the whole show. Yeah, no, moose, elk. I hunted elk a bit, and then once the mountains got a hold of me, everything else got put on hold.
That was that was your passion.
Yeah.
Still is your passion.
By far. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the cool things here in BC is that rivers are a highway, and a lot of places like in Alberta, you can jump in a riverboat and you can drive to the mountains, but I could also drive on a highway there and meet the boat there. But there's a lot of interior British Columbia because there's so many mountains here and river ranges that in between the mountain ranges that there's a lot of travel that is done on the rivers by riverboat.
You betcha.
And so you can't get there any other way other than those riverboats. And I know we did a hunt with you up in the mountains for mountain goat, and I mean it was fascinating to get in a riverboat, and we threw in I think 90 gallons of fuel, was it?
Yeah, that'd be 90 gallons of fuel.
We had
on
it
us.
6.5 hours up the river and went mountain goat hunting, and the not only the goats, but we saw stone sheep, we saw grizzly and moose, and elk. There was so many elk back in there, and in Alberta we're so used to the elk are in the farmlands. And there they were up in the mountains. That was cool.
Yeah. No, and it's, the boat, I mean, you either got your legs, a boat, a horse, or a plane. And not many people have a plane. And you still need a place to land the thing, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the areas that you go, everyone's like, oh, you can jet boat into spots and then, there's 40 boats at the landing. But when you have 200 miles of river, take 40 boats and divide that up.
Yeah.
You're not stepping over your neighbors, right?
No.
And the moment you get out of your boat and start hiking 20K off the river, you got it all. You know, there's no competition. You are there all by yourself. Take your time. You want to sleep in and hunt late in the day, go ahead. You know, no one's going to beat you to it, right?
So was it the sheep that drew you there? Is that your biggest passion in the mountains?
Yep. It kind of hooked me. I went on, my first hunt, I went with Tim from work and then one of his good friends and another friend, Dale. And we went up to a spot there, my first hunt. It was in 2003. And, got up there, did a little jet boat trip and, hiked around and climbed this mountain and got rained out and come down and climbed another mountain, crappy weather, got back to camp. And one day I was just stir crazy because it'd been raining and horrible weather, and I'd set up a spotting scope and I was just looking in between patches of the clouds, right? Just staring at hills whenever they come into view, and set the scope up, and it's maybe 8-9 kilometers away down the river, and there was one point that kept poking up, so I was watching it, and then all of a sudden there's 2 rams standing in the wide open, and they were really light fanning colored rams, so plain as day. So I kind of beetle back to camp and I tell Dale, I'm like, oh, I just seen some rams. He's like, oh, sure. We'd been up a bunch of hills already, seen nothing. So I get back to spotting scope. Wait. Some like 2 hours went by, it seemed like, but it was probably 5 minutes. And the clouds clear and there's 2 caribou standing in the same spot. And I'm trying to convince him that I'm like, Dale, I'm not crazy. I said, I seen sheep, and those sheep were rams. They said honey-colored horns, light capes. They were not this cow-calf caribou combo. I swear, right? So after a little convincing, dried out some gear, and we headed up there the next day. And lo and behold, during this whole operation of getting up there, which was a bunch of burned flat land, and then so it was pickup sticks, like, crawling over and under and just nasty stuff. Old burns are not, they might hold lots of grass, but you don't want to walk through them, right?
No, not after, especially after wind starts blowing them down.
Oh, and they're all down.
Yeah.
Like half the time I'd be walking 5 feet off the ground and I'd just zigzag across the tops of the trees. It just was my ski poles.
Yeah, but you're half squirrel. You can do that. I'm the one falling down all the time.
Oh, trust me. On the way down, there's a good story with that. But so, and not knowing the area at all. This is all virgin dirt to us. No one's ever really been there. It's kind of just pick a hill.
Yeah.
We just reconnaissance. And Tim and Eugene were up another area. Same thing, just scouting, trying to maybe locate some sheep, right?
Yeah.
No idea if they were there or not. And so we get up there and kind of get up, finally crawl over this height of land and poke our noses over. And sure enough, there's a ram staring right at us, probably 700-800 yards away. So we kind of just backed off and they continued feeding. It was just, they skylined us a little bit. They not concerned at all. And there was a couple caribou running around in this little spot. There was a little lake up there. So we're kind of contemplating where we're going to camp and find a nice spot off the beaten path, that won't interrupt these sheep, and start unloading gear. And Dale had a dog named Barney. Well, Barney had lost the tent, his sleeping bag, like everything important. So I'm like, well, that's okay. No big deal. I said, I got my Thermarest. I got my sleeping bag. So I offered Dale, I'm like, take my Thermarest. And he's like, oh, no worries. I got this survival blanket. One of those about the size of a cigarette pack. Yeah. And I'm like,
crinkly foil.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, that sounds fair. I'll just sleep on my nice sleeping bag on this mat. It's August. It's not horribly cold, but it's not exactly warm, and the wind and everything else. So we tuck into these little spruce mound, get all cozy. I fall asleep. No big deal. I don't know if it was probably 3 a.m. There's a little fire going underneath this tree. This survival blanket is just a tattered mess. So 4:30 kind of rolls around. It starts getting light. 5, the sun starts poking up, right? And so I'm just gung-ho, right? I'm like, this is the best thing ever, right? There's rams there. And one looked good, right? Because we've seen 3. So we sneak over and just take a peek over the hill. And sure enough, it's Ramtopia. Way more than what, that we laid eyes on earlier. And I'm like, well, let's get in there and shoot one of these things, right? And Dale's like, if we go shoot one of those things, we're spending the night. And I got no gear, so no. And I'm like, okay, all right. So down the mountain we go, because we had a base camp with a bigger tent down there.
Yeah.
So back to base camp we go. We look for gear. It ain't anywhere to be found. It's buried still there somewhere. And so we get back down there probably about noon. Eat some oatmeal or whatever, have a little food, and then Tim and Eugene show up, and I'm like, don't even unpack your stuff. We're going hunting. So back up the mountain that same day, and then hike back up top there, put the rams to bed kind of thing, woke up in the morning, found them, and then chased them around that day, and that was the first time I ever missed a sheep.
Oh, first one you shot at? First one you missed?
First one I shot at. So drew straws, right? So Eugene drew the first shooter, Tim drew the second one, and I drew the third. And the way it played out, we separated the band of rams, kind of that. There was 2 bands of rams with legal sheep in it, kind of here and here. So Tim took off further down the valley to this other smaller band of rams, and the agreement was we would just shoot first, and then he would shoot after.
Right.
So if you hear us shoot, get to shoot. Get into position, watch him, whatever. But we were probably a kilometer apart, so really we're not going to interfere with his hunt. He's not going to interfere with us, but it was just Eugene will shoot first, and then we'll sort it out from there.
Right.
So we get up on these sheep. I pull a nice stalk with Eugene, 175 yards. He shoots his ram while it's bedded, just a beautiful Fannin ram, like 38 inches, just gorgeous. Tips it over. Rams all bust up, and they were wandering around, and they're all mixed up. So here we are looking through spotting, so trying to figure out where this other one is. Finally isolate it. Okay, I shoot, and I hit the rock right behind the ram. And Eugene said hit. Like he was convinced I'd shot, like hit the ram or went through the ram, because it looked really good from his perspective. So there's rams moving everywhere. I just put my gun down.
Oh.
Because the last thing I wanted to do was have 2 dead rams or 3 dead rams, right?
Right.
You know, that's not, if you're not sure, just stop shooting.
Oh, that's a responsible thing to do.
And I was, yeah, which I thought was pretty good for my age. And so anyway, we let things cool down. And the funny thing about it is that there was 6 sheep to start with, right? 1 fell down.
Yeah.
3 rams went toward where Tim was, and 2 rams went the other way. If any of us were counting,
yeah. There's 5.
There's 5. The ram I shot at come down and walked 90 yards above me. I took pictures of it, the whole 9 yards. I could have shot it for 3 hours straight. We just hunkered down, and then we were watching Tim, and then we picked him up, and then pretty soon, bam, and we see the sheep react, and then hear the shot. Hey,
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of comes down the hill, and it's hurt bad, and it comes down and finally falls or whatever. And so Tim's dealing with his ram. We go up, and now we're scratching our heads. And I mean, we're looking everywhere. We find Eugene's ram, and we're just scrambling around. And then I go back to look over here. Those 2 rams are way up in the cliffs over here. And I look over here, and there's the other 3. Then start doing the math. And I'm like, it's a miss. So the first hunt, super successful. I mean, unbelievable. We didn't need 3 rams. We had our work cut out for us with 2.
Oh, that's a lot of work, yeah.
And I left my pack. Another good point. Never leave your pack anywhere. Keep it on your back.
Yep.
My pack's back at like camp. So I packed out those heads with 2 sleeping bag straps tied together, capes on, faces in, over my head like a Sherpa in Nepal.
Oh my God.
On horrible terrain for a very long time. I've never been so tired. And then Tim's like, oh yeah, we'll just cut down here. And I'm like, we should climb, you know, and he's like, no, camp's just down around it. And we end up in the spruce death forest, right? Of course, right?
Oh yeah.
You're side hilling and you're constantly moving down, and it's dark, so you don't really have that. And so we end up in the canyons and the spruce, and then it's just a straight up haul for way too long. I remember being like, Eugene, you got anything to eat? He's like, oh, I got some beef jerky. I put it in my mouth, and it was like chewing sawdust. I didn't even have enough spit to eat the jerky, right? I was just gassed beyond. Never been so tired. And then finally just kind of broke over a summit, and camp was like 500 yards away, and I'm just like, woo, get in there. It was so fantastic. And so it's just a garage sale. You know, everything just hits the ground. We're exhausted, just kind of meat and capes and stuff everywhere. Wake up in the morning, start organizing stuff and putting stuff away. And Dale, to this day, I'm like, that dirtbag. He put a beer in my pack, a beer in Eugene's pack, and this little Mickey of scotch in Tim's. How he snuck those in there in like 10 minutes, I don't know how he managed to do it.
And so you packed them all the way up?
All the way up there. And we never discovered this till we were like leaving, right? So anyway, we had a celebration up there for him. And yeah, it was a fantastic hunt. And from that time on, you know, I call it my main hunting partner, like mountain hunting partner, Nathan. We went hunting the next year after that, and pretty much have hunted every year in the mountains.
Yeah,
I would be a sad guy if I never got to go.
Yeah, the mountains, and it's funny because you get out there, and you got to understand. Most of the time when you're in the mountains, life's miserable.
Yeah,
everybody talks about, well, you know, what's the right gear to take, and you know, the right sleeping bag and all that. And I say, look, you got the wrong attitude here. It's gonna keep you alive, but you ain't gonna be comfortable doing it. That's all you're looking for, is just to maintain, you know, life. That's it. And you're out there, and after about day 5 or 6, and you're thinking, oh God, maybe this is my last year in the mountains, and and you get home and it takes about 3 weeks for your feet to heal and your toenails to fall off and all that other stuff, and you're thinking, oh God, oh God. Then about a month later, it's like, so where are we going to go next year?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. If you don't like a bit of suffering, it's probably not your cup of tea.
No, everybody says, you get out in the mountains and after a week you're in such good shape. You got to understand, the mountain is trying to kill you. I mean, it's plain and simple. Every day. You give it half a chance, it's going to kill you. It's not your friend, and it's not trying to get you in shape. It's trying to kill you. So you got to be on top of your game. And there's only so long you can stay on top of that game before you got to get out of there.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, from the calorie intake to the calorie expended.
Oh.
You're basically on starvation rations from day one.
Well, I remember
day 3, you feel great. By day 7, you're like, yep, definitely skinny.
Yeah. Well, when we did that goat hunt,
yeah.
Sandy and I did a goat hunt with Greg, and Sandy and I both shot our goats on the same day. Well, I ended up with a complete cape of a full life-size cape,
of a later season cape.
A big billy. Her shoulder cape off of hers, and the horns and some of the meat. She ended up with all the gear. So she had about 75-pound pack. You had I don't know what your pack was, but
it was lots.
Mine was
had a pile of meat in that thing.
Mine was like 150, 160 plus. Like you went to pick it up the next day and give it a sling, and you just about went with it. It was like, but when that day coming out of the mountains, and it was kind of the same thing because we were just putting the packs on, we were done, and I was. You asked me what was I doing? I said I was digging around for my headlamp. Why is that? Because we're going to need it really quick. And it was about 20 minutes later we had headlamps on. And I don't know, how many hours were we through the dark?
Now, it's slow moving through there. I would probably say we would have been almost 2.5 hours probably of dark to come out of that valley.
And I was working.
And plus you get lost about 6 times in the buckbrush because you can't even see your feet.
No, and I blew every ounce of electrolytes and everything out of my body that night, and I just kept drinking and drinking and drinking. We got back to camp and we cooked up Mountain House, which it's freeze dried, but my God, that's a meal fit for a king. You were so excited to eat that once a day, and I couldn't eat it. I would try to take a mouthful and I'd almost be sick. And then I set it down and I'd look at it. I still can't. That was like Kung Pao chicken or something like that. I still to this day can't eat it. I sat there and drank some coffee and drank Gatorade and all that. And I finally got some electrolytes back into my body, and I was okay the next day. But I'd washed everything. I was just sweating and drinking water, and drinking water. That was, we got down in the bottom and took the wrong turn somewhere and ended up remember that balsam and sphagnum moss? Well, this moss was about this deep, and you just sink into it, just a huge step every time. You got this big weight on your back, and I stumble and stagger over this one log, and there's a big hole on the other side of it, and Sandy doesn't see that. And I'm standing on the other side, kind of got my head down, and I'm blowing out a bit, and she steps over the log and steps right into that hole. Well, it's the coolest thing because I can just see this headlamp, and it does this complete rotation in the air, and she ends up in this hole upside down at the bottom of it. But it was just like when you're kids and you'd have that glowing coal on the end of the willow and you do that. Yeah. That's exactly what her headlamp looked like going into that hole. Oh, I laughed. But yeah, and once again, that was an awesome trip in the mountains, but we were pretty played out by the time we got out of there.
But pain sets in deep memories.
Oh yeah.
You
don't learn from it. You don't
learn from it. They say pain's easy to forget, which is true because, you put yourself through it every time.
Well, Carol Burnett said that the best humor is simply pain plus time. And she was right.
True words, eh?
Yeah. So while this is going on, you're working at Corlanes, and then you started to get interested. What was the driving part about getting interested in guns?
Well, like Rod and myself, like I say, I did a lot of machine stuff in school and everything else. So the
back when we still had shop class, right?
Exactly. We were building grade 9. We were building knives and cannons.
Yeah.
That was our shop projects.
What kid didn't have a cannon back then?
I cast a 3.5-foot aluminum sword like from scratch. You could do anything you wanted.
I
used to bring my bow and arrow on the bus every day to school to go target practice.
Yep.
I mean, maybe leave the broadheads at home, but it was no one batted an eye. I mean, it's just, yeah, people. But yeah, no, the gun part of things. Growing up, we had a handful of guns around the farm, right? Most of the stuff I shot actually was iron sights and a military Mauser and 308.
Yep.
I mean, it was super proficient, great eyes, all that kind of stuff. It's all you ever needed, right?
Oh.
Shot moose with that thing, shot everything with it. It was fantastic.
I'd shot a lot of animals long before I ever had a scope.
I got a scope on a Lakefield Mark II 22. That was kind of a big deal. I bought it from one of my dad's friends, Richard, and it was kind of a birthday thing or whatever. And I was high roller. I had a fixed 4-power 3/4-inch tube scope. I mean, it was fantastic. Chickens never seen me coming after that, right?
Exactly.
So, and then once I started at Corlanes, picked up a few more guns, of course. I mean, the worst thing about working at a gun store is you end up buying a lot of guns.
Yeah.
You can't help yourself, right?
Well, you're an addict right in the middle of it all.
It's so sad. I mean, even when a guy you hire a new person now and comes to work, the want monster is just out of control when they're first there. You give them about 5 years and they calm down, right? You know, anything new comes in, you're just like, I got to have that,
Yep.
So, yeah, your gear supply goes up in a hurry when you are working. Your paycheck's pretty grim, though. It's more of a charity thing. I'll trade you some of my time for more guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you started then, and what was your first responsibilities in the gun shop?
A lot of the stuff I did, reassembly, disassembly, I had very good intellect for that kind of thing, right?
Right.
So nothing really, you put anything together, tear something apart once, you put it together. So a lot of refinishing. At that time, we did a lot of Teflon finishing. That was a very new and awesome process, actually.
Putting Teflon on metal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was kind of the first of the non-rust or like corrosion-proof type finishes.
Right.
Rod and Tim had been doing that previous to when I started for 3 or 4 years, I think. But that was a major part, and then right into general repairs, scope mountings, a lot of the things, the core knowledge, just like any shop guy. You're going to be changing air filters and changing oils before you get to pull spark plugs, right?
Right.
So just an ever-evolving thing, and Rod would always joke, I'd do a bunch of jobs or whatever, and he's like, you're ticketed for this one now, right? So, and then into more machine work, a lot of stock inletting, glass bedding, recoil pads, a large amount of just general maintenance. Refinishing was the core part. We had another shop set up. I spent just countless hours up there sandblasting and coating and everything else. And that's kind of how, when I was younger, that was kind of the fun money, right? I'd work extra up there after hours and then just work the store during the days, right?
Oh, okay.
So that kind of funded your hunting trips and stuff like that.
It was kind of an apprenticeship too, right?
Very much so. And, spent lots of time with different gunsmiths around the area and just absorbed knowledge from whoever, whenever, right? There's a lot of guys out there, and a lot of these guys that I, spent time with, there's a couple of them, they're not even here anymore, right? So at the time, there was not a lot of young blood coming into the gun industry, right?
No.
It's not even a recognized real trade in Canada. It's getting to be a more sought after courses and things like there's some online things. There's like Nate in Edmonton that does some chambering and barreling courses and things like that. So there is an avenue for people to learn a bit. But I mean, if you want a lot of experience, you come work for me and I'll show you, we work on 400, 500 guns are in queue all day, every day.
Yeah.
So if you want to know how to fix something, you're going to see it repeatedly and you learn a big base fast.
It's like the old back in medieval times in the guilds where you signed on and you became an apprentice or slave to a master, and he was a master of in the guild of whether it was making stone cups or thatching roofs or whatever. In this case, the guns are still that way, right?
Absolutely.
And I know that you worked a lot with Rod. Rod was
Very much so. Like, yeah, Rod, I mean, even before I started working at Corlanes, I used to pick shed antlers all the time and sell them to Rod. And, so I was a Corlanes customer from when I was, just a young guy, right?
Yeah.
Every year, go pick up some ammo and a few arrows and whatever it takes. Yeah.
So, about the time I got to know you was when you guys really started to move into custom guns.
Yeah. Yeah. About the time we were just moving kind of over to our new location.
Right.
About the time that we really started crossing paths on a more regular basis. And that's almost 10 years ago now when we moved in 2000. It was kind of the summer of 2008. We spent about a year in transition there.
Right.
And that's where we, really had the capacity as far as a shop, the manpower and everything to really grow our Rocky Mountain Rifle brand.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And so now that with that brand, you've worked with different action makers.
Absolutely.
And you, because I know I have several Rocky Mountain rifles, and I have Defiance and Stiller actions, and
Macmillan.
I have a Macmillan action. And I've had you
And
customize some other rifles.
Yeah, lots of commercial actions.
Yeah,
Revamped and restocked and rebarreled.
Yeah, some Remington 700s, some Winchesters, some
your Thompsons.
Yeah.
And the sky's the limit. I mean, you need a heart of the operation, which is your action, and it can come from many sources to achieve the caliber, the desired weight you want, the style of extractor. There's a lot of ways to make an omelet, right?
What I really like about a custom rifle today is they are so damn accurate. And I take I just got a 6mm. You do that 6mm Creedmoor for me. Okay, so I actually took in a donor gun. I had a TC Icon.
Yep.
From years ago, and it was it 308 or 30 TC?
30 TC, sorry.
Yeah,
yes,
30,
yes.
30. So not a cartridge that I wanted to hold on to, but I took it in and had you rebarrel it, rechamber it for the 6mm Creedmoor. And now you have this range of bullets that's available for it, and different ammunition and all, plus my loads and that. But I mean, the worst it shoots is still sub 1 inch. That particular weight of bullet at that velocity and that is sub 1 inch. I have others that you could cover 3 rounds with the end of a pencil. You know what I mean? At 100 yards. It's just that if it's not shooting good that day, it's a 1 inch shooter. But I mean, it's capable of shooting 1 inch at 400 yards. I mean, that is what I find is the coolest thing about them. I've had many rifles in my day. At one time, I probably had very close to 100 centerfire rifles. Since I discovered you guys in custom rifles, I had to feed the addiction somehow. I sold a bunch of those rifles, and got into the customs. But the thing about that was that we were always searching for that 1 inch rifle, and most off the shelf rifles, if you could get them to shoot 1 inch at 100 yards, that was quite an accomplishment. You're pretty proud of that rifle.
Absolutely.
If any one of my Rocky Mountain rifles is shooting 1 inch, I know that I had a bad day.
Yeah, and that's what a guy's looking to achieve. I mean, you do stack the deck with a custom rifle. You can really engineer it to what you know is going to work. There's calibers out there that I don't care what they're made on, they're notoriously inaccurate. Right, so there's some of those things that.
So what's one of the worst ones?
Some of the older style chamberings with long free bores and things like that, which are not apt to shoot, especially the newer generation of bullets.
Okay.
Like VLDs do not like to jump 200 thousandths before they hit the rifling.
Right.
They'll come. I mean, you'd be lucky to have a 5-inch gun.
Yeah.
And some of the traditional, to pick on them, like say a Weatherby chambering.
Right.
With extreme freebore, yes, you're going to pound the velocity out of that thing. You can pour powder to it till you should never get that much in there, and they'll still suck it up. Like, pressure's no issue, and velocity is insane, but you lose your accuracy.
So explain to people maybe that don't understand the mechanics of it. Why do they have the big free bore? What is free bore?
Free bore is basically the distance that your bullet has to travel before it's engaged into the rifling of the firearm. So
it's basically
that dead space.
It's basically jumping into the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's unsupported.
Right.
Through a long travel. So whether it's your ejector plunger pushes your cartridge slightly astray, because I mean there's tolerances. Your ammunition can't be exactly the same size as your chamber because it basically won't fit, or it could get stuck with any debris. So it's undersized. So your ejector plunger is pushing force on one side of the cartridge, which is going to line it off. Your ammunition, if you're not checking it on a concentricity gauge and it's hanging out there, you could be 3 or 4 thousandths out a round right there.
Right.
So then compound that with the big jump, et cetera, everything's out of a line.
So why would they have the big jump?
Well, back in the day, before you had turrets and everything else, I mean, if you could jam more velocity, you were a flatter shooter. So then you had less holdovers and you could shoot further.
Right.
And it was a velocity chase.
So it was to get that velocity. So that bullet actually had to jump that. In this case, we're talking about the difference between, some loads today we're gonna be sitting real close to the lands. We might be 10 thousandths off.
Yep.
So these were jumping 200 thousandths, but that allowed that bullet to accelerate.
Yeah, it evens out the pressure curve.
Exactly.
So you can really pour the coals to them and not get that high pressure spike.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was those created issues in the older style of guns now.
Yeah, those were engineered in the 50s and 60s when, honestly, a good shooting gun, go reel an old Field and Stream, they were excited about factory ammo shooting 3-inch groups.
Yeah.
So when your Weatherby with a guarantee of an 1.5-inch group, that was awesome.
Yeah.
But now it's come full circle.
Well, and part of that, I think, is that we're chasing the long range, right? It's become its own sport. I mean, shooting those great distances. I mean, I shoot to 800 yards on my own place.
Yep.
I have a range there, and I mean, it's just to me, it's a zen kind of thing. Like to sit down there and just boom, and I have 8-inch gong, and to whack an 8-inch gong every time out at 800 yards, I'm really proud of that.
Oh,
that ability.
And just to watch the bullet in flight, just slide in there, hook, and when it's windy, hook in there like a bad golf shot, and actually hit. Because you metered the wind and you actually hit what you're aiming at. And you might be holding 4 feet off of that target, yet you can shoot a wicked group in the wind.
Yeah. And the other thing is that a lot of people don't understand is that if you have a gun that shoots 1 inch at 100 yards, it's geometric, and it's just pure math. But by the time you get it out to 800 yards, that's 8 inches. Okay?
That's right.
Now, plus human error gets worse and worse as distance goes out, things like parallax and all that kind of stuff. So now when I'm consistently hitting that 8-inch gong out there at 800 yards, I'm shooting much better than one MOA, which is 1 inch at 100 yards.
Yep.
And that was just never possible before.
No. Because how do you consistently hold without a reference point or a turret or some other...
Yeah.
How do you hold 85 inches above something?
Yeah, people have no idea, right?
You tell a person to hold 6 inches over a deer, and that number will be from 0 to 18 inches. It's perception, right?
Well, I went to the FDW ranch in Texas last year in May, and it was for the Zeiss announcement of the V6 line. Mm-hmm. And we shot up to 1,500 yards. We were shooting 6.5 Creedmoor, which a lot of people love to hate, but it's probably the cartridge that is probably more responsible for more accurate shooting out there. And it's simply because a lot of people buy it not understanding what they're buying. They think it's this miracle cartridge. It's not, but they can shoot it well because it doesn't kick the snot out of them. There's no big chase for velocity there.
No.
They're just shooting a really nice, reliable, very accurate cartridge.
Efficient design.
And they shoot it well because they're not getting the snot kicked out of them, right? We shot out to 1,500 yards, and it was really cool because we had a wind blowing and everything else. We were holding 105 inches for wind. Okay, so big old curving golf shot. 105 inches off is where we're actually aiming to hit out there at 1,500 yards. At its peak, that bullet was over 31 feet above the line of sight. So it's this big old looping golf slice, and you're hitting. Now we're not shooting animals; we're just shooting gongs.
Absolutely.
But
You would
I
not shoot an
no
animal in those
no.
conditions ever.
But what an accomplishment! So the first gong you shoot at out there, there's 6 of them.
Yeah.
The first one you shoot at is 3 MOA. So 3 times 15 because you're 1,500 meters. So it's 45 inches, right?
Yeah.
And
Big sheet of plywood.
Yeah, well, you think, people think shooting something 45 inches. Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what, you feel pretty strutty when you hit that. And then they get smaller. And I got hit 1 through 5. I got down to the 7.5 inch, so it was half MOA. I missed it. And I just didn't have enough wind. I caught a gust or whatever on the way, and I didn't have enough wind. But you feel pretty proud about hitting that stuff out there. Let me tell you,
1,500 yards. You know you would.
It's so cool. But that's the kind of accuracy that we're capable of today, and it's got to do with the quality components that you put together, and especially with stock technology too.
Yeah, soaking it up, tracking properly. Just even the adjustability to get your head in the right spot, so your parallax is not playing games with you and everything else. And again, I think the biggest thing is shoot the smallest caliber you think you need for the job, because you're going to shoot it the best.
Well, I started when I started hunting, my first rifle was a 308, and after I don't know, you go get away from home, that kind of stuff. I bought a 338. I always wanted one, so I got this 338 Win Mag, and I hunted a lot with it, killed a lot of things with it, and that, and I went through all the magnums, the 338, the 300, the 7, all that stuff. And then all of a sudden I found myself going back down smaller again, back to that 308. Now you've built me a custom 308. I have a bunch of 6.5s. Those are my favorite rifles, and it's just because you can sit there and shoot it.
Yep. And it's half the amount of powder. It's the same bullet.
Yep.
So they're economical to shoot as well. Especially a factory ammo situation. I mean, as you get into the bigger magnums, say an average is $80 a box. If you buy Creedmoor, it's $40.
Yeah.
It's just, it's powder, lead, and brass. And the smaller it is, the cheaper it is most of the time.
And here's the thing is that when people are chasing velocity all the time because they want it to be flat shooting, well, today's optics takes care of the rainbow. Okay.
Absolutely.
Today's optics will take care of the rainbow. We're shooting that 6.5 Creedmoor out to 1,500 yards, and it was leaving the barrel at 2,700 foot a second. Okay, that is not no speedball. But the other thing is that those sleek, sexy bullets, they take care of this. They take care of the wind for you. So the higher the ballistic coefficient, the less you have to be able to read the wind. Yeah. So you've got the optics that take care of this. And you're shooting a high ballistic coefficient bullet to help you with the wind. I mean, people are capable of shooting stuff they never believed of before.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have that great big giant magnum.
And repeatable.
And repeatable. I can remember when we started in chasing the long range game and you started building guns and that for me. One of the big guns that you were building back then, or the big cartridges, was the 378.
3378 Weatherby's?
Weatherby, yeah.
And just a monster.
Well,
over 100 grains of powder.
Kick the snot out of you, 8 barrels.
Yeah.
So your accuracy wasn't there very long, right?
No, and then the other thing, a guy really kind of warms up to your gun. You spend some time at the bench with it, and you're going to shoot 200, 300 rounds. I guarantee you in the first several months you own a gun.
Yep.
Well, with some of these big guns, you're halfway through your barrel.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
And last time I checked, when I put a barrel on, by the time the dust settles, it's not a cheap thing.
Nope.
So I'd like to have some, it's like having 700 horsepower on a set of pizza cutters. You're going to burn them up quick, right? And then you're back at the shop. You just get to loving the gun, and it's time to change it again, right?
Absolute worst cartridge for eating a barrel?
Oh. Like the 257 STW.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 25 STW is just a monster.
Yeah. And what kind of barrel life are you talking about?
Well, it's a funny one because what'll happen with them is you'll develop a load, say like literally a couple hundred rounds in, and then all of a sudden your proven load that's shooting really good starts showing signs of pressure all of a sudden, and it starts acting really weird. You get sticky bolt lifts, and so you back the load off and everything kind of goes away. But what's happening is, you've eroded your throat aggressively, and it's coarse, and the bullet starts and then grabs that scale and then kind of stops and gets you a fluctuation in pressure.
Oh.
And then all of a sudden you've dropped your load back. So now you're dropped 2 grains.
Yeah.
And your velocity stays. And then all of a sudden you'll start shooting. And then the next time it acts up, it's pretty much complete cartridge meltdown. So
wow.
it's a funny one. It's too overbore for what the bullet. And it just gets that stop-go type. And I've seen some disastrous results from that cartridge.
I remember one time we machined open one of those barrels off the 257.
Oh, like a Weatherby or one of those type ones, or an STW.
I think it was the STW.
Yeah, because I always have lots of them laying around.
Yeah, and it was literally missing about that much. There must have been 10, 12 inches of rifling that didn't exist. Yeah, past right from the chamber out. It was like, holy crap.
Yeah, you got some of the older Winchesters or the older Remington in the early stainless era.
Yeah.
Where they were still colored black, but they were actually stainless barrels.
Uh-huh.
Those were super soft. And in the 264 Win Mag, they would be smooth bores by the time, you cut them down so you can actually see in there and show people that. And they're like, wow.
Yeah.
And inches of no defined rifling.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just shocked. Like how you could actually shoot that. And I mean, that thing is, it's like a gutter ball in bowling. Yeah, it's rattling its way down that barrel until it engages that what's left of the rifling.
Yeah, you'd have to shoot a cast bullet so it swells up.
Okay, so when we talk about accuracy then, what is, I've got a gun, and it's been a good shooting gun. All of a sudden, accuracy goes away. What's the number one thing you're going to look for?
Usually my first question is what we were doing when the accuracy went bad. If they were deer hunting or elk hunting and things like that, if they were actively hunting at the time, my first instinct is to look for a bulged barrel. Hands down.
Okay, and how would that happen?
Not putting a protective cover over the muzzle of your firearm.
Okay, that's a good point, because we all have the habit of the rifle and the sling over the shoulder, and you're saying that you should have a finger caught or a piece of tape
of electrical tape over the end of your barrel.
Yeah.
I mean, I've more firearms in a year probably are damaged from that phenomenon than anything else combined.
So something falling down in the barrel?
Falling down, or just dipping her in the snow, coming out of a hot truck, dipping it in the snow, or just stumbling and putting your barrel in the muck and not really realizing. Walking through the spruce, whatever it takes. It doesn't take a lot. And then they finish hunting or whatever, or say they shoot their game and it was a wild card shot, and they recover the animal, but they're like, I didn't hit where I was aiming, and then I went and checked my gun and it's all over the place. I pull the bolt out of that gun right at the front counter, put it up to the light, look down the barrel, and often about 1.25 inches down from the muzzle there will be a black ring, and they just stand out like you wouldn't believe. It just looks like a black ring in a shiny hallway, and that's what it is. Lot of wintertime, lot of deer season. Snow and ice is the most common one. Snow gets in there, warms up in the truck, and then you take it back out. Now you got an ice jam. And it doesn't take a lot to bulge a barrel. Very little.
And people wouldn't believe that. I know, like a lot of people, all my rifles, I always have a piece of electrical tape over the end of that. And a lot of people are saying, well, you can't shoot that with that on because you're going to cause that a barrel bulge.
Nope.
No, not at all, because it's actually the air going out in front of the bullet that removes that tape. That tape is long gone before that bullet ever clears it.
Yeah, it's vapor.
Yeah, but that's not the same when you've got ice or a twig jammed in there or whatever. That's a different story altogether.
Yeah,
right?
Cobweb from the year before and your first round cleans it out.
Yeah.
Yep, it's going to be torched. And sometimes they're really obvious. You can actually see them from the outside if you actually look at it. Holy, and you point it out to the customer. And then usually I'll pull a bore snaker through just to shine it up so it's really
Yeah.
Amplified. And then you show it to them and they're like, wow, and then you ask them, recap what you're doing at the time. And a lot of times it's like, oh, I jumped out of my truck to shoot this wolf and I fell and then I got up and I shot at the wolf and I missed.
Yeah.
And that's when it all went to bad.
Okay.
The other things you always look for, there's a lot of package guns out there on the market as well. I get all sorts of, just basic package guns that go out. They have subpar mounts on them, right? I always am pretty critical on scope mounts.
Right.
There are winners and losers.
Okay.
You add good recoil into the equation with cheap mounts and an average scope. Yeah, a lot can go wrong there. That's another major one to look at.
So the guy's got a gun, and it's never really shot really good for him. He wants to bring up the accuracy. Say it's a nice 700 clone or a Tika or whatever.
Yeah.
Not to pick on any brand, but
yeah.
what's the first thing that you look at doing? What are the first three things that you look to tweak it for accuracy?
Pretty much, if you're going to open up a box on a gun, open the lid, hand it to me, get the trigger and the bedding done. Get it free-floated and get that trigger set up. They're getting better with triggers these days, but there's still lots of room for improvement. Most guns are coming with a 5-pound trigger, 4-pound trigger. Like a Tika, for instance, is a good example. I mean, it's on average a 6-pound 2-ounce gun to 6-pound 8-ounce gun, depending on caliber and barrel length.
Right.
They come with, on an average, about a 4-pound trigger. So just think, you got a 6 and a bit pound gun with a 4-pound trigger.
Yeah.
Pretty easy to move that thing around. It's not 25 pounds, right? So get the trigger weight down to a functional weight. You don't have to have a 1-pound trigger for hunting. It's not the right type of thing. Too light, can't feel it when it's cold. Adverse conditions, especially in the north. Get a trigger between 2 and 3 pounds. Normally, I'd say 2.5 to 3 pounds is probably the best all-around weight that I would set a trigger to. And get it crisp and clean so that it does break smoothly, so you're not yanking or pulling or pre-anticipating the gun going off and there's a bunch of creep and then the shot's gone, right? You'll never get it back. And then bedding. Depending on the manufacturer, bedding of the stock, making sure it's repeatable to put in and out. So when you service your gun and you put it back on, it's not going to change point of impact by a mile, right?
So this is one thing that people don't understand. Maybe you can explain. Free-floated barrel and then bedding the action. A lot of people still under the impression that you'd bed the whole length of the barrel. That's not true, right? The barrel should not touch the stock. Now you want to bed the action, and what part of the action do you bed?
Call it your 4 main points of contact. Your recoil lug, mainly where your front guard screw goes through and your rear guard screw goes through. You've got bedding on the tang and on the bottom metal, and then again on the recoil lug area and the front as well. So you kind of have basically your 4 points of contact. Depending on the material in the stock, wood stock can be easily glass bedded the full action and the full bottom metal. Some of the plastic stocks, epoxies don't like injection molded synthetics all that well. So you kind of just focus on the key point, which is the recoil lug relationship, so that when you take the gun out and put it back in, it's a perfect blueprint. So it always repeats, and when you torque your action screws, it's always the same stresses. It just deals with a lot of the harmonics as well. The free-floated barrel thing just eliminates a lot of issues. Contact on your barrel. Well, just take your gun and set your barrel on your vise and shoot it. You will not hit anywhere near where you normally are, and then move it up onto the proper part. And the gun shoots beautiful.
Yeah.
So free floating is just, it eliminates so many variables right off the bat. No contact. So as your barrel warms and grows or moves away from, point of least resistance to et cetera, they move a lot. And if you get away from that, you're pretty much got the tiger by the tail, right? That's the trick. A lot of companies are catching on to this, but Remington and they still have 10 pounds of forend pressure on there, and that's the first thing I rip out. I mean, I think it's just easier for them to build stocks at contact than to free float everything after the fact.
Right.
Yep.
So what's the difference then with pillar bedding?
Pillar bedding, when you're dealing with especially wood stocks,
Right.
environmental changes,
Okay.
wood grows and shrinks. It is alive for life.
Okay.
I mean, it starts alive, it's still alive. Pillar bedding will allow you to maintain a torque rating on your screws without collapsing the stock over time as well.
So you've installed a pillar in there that the screws go through. So actually,
Correct.
it's a tube.
It's
a metal tube.
Metal tube that will contacts your bottom metal and your receiver. So as they come together, the pillar is the contact point. So no longer you cannot crush that aluminum pillar or that steel pillar.
Right.
Now you can run torque pressures higher than what you could before.
Right.
With wood stocks, you don't like to run any more than about 40, 45 foot-pound or inch-pounds on them, or they start shrinking. And then all of a sudden your guard screw starts sticking through. Your bottom metal starts torquing. Your magazine may not start opening properly. And that's just a time thing. And
then everybody is always so worried about, keeping everything torqued up. Most people over torque the heck out of everything, don't they? Especially like
scopes.
So yeah.
When they turn into eggs, you're too tight.
Well, yeah, you've got to when you mount, we screw down your mounts. You're what? 30, 35.
Base screws.
Yeah.
You can put a lot more to those. Blue Loctite them down. Run them between 25 to 30 inch-pounds, and not really. But I strangle them. I mean, I run them up high.
But you use the Blue Loctite.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Then everything's good. Base screws, you can put a little more to it. Now, if you do the same torque on your rings, now there's different scope manufacturers have different tolerances in their tubes, right? A lightweight scope, let's just say Swarovski, for instance, just to pick one out of the map. Very expensive scope, all that kind of stuff. They have a very light tube. Their scope weighs 16 ounces instead of 22. That's why. Right? The glass weighs the same as the next scope, but the tube is thinner.
Right.
So they have a recommended torque spec. Stick with it, because if you go 5 pounds more, you'll start showing ring marks into that scope. And they don't disappear.
No.
Take it off.
Can't buff it out.
No. And that's a very common thing. Vortex has as their lineup goes, they have a prorated torque spec for each one of those scopes.
Yeah.
Down to 17 inch-pounds on a lot of those, mid-grade scopes.
Really?
Their tubes are soft, right? So it's not that they're soft, they're thin.
Right.
Now you get a Night Force, for instance. I mean, you can probably put 40 inch-pounds on that scope because it's a heavy-walled scope. I mean,
There's nothing light about them, is there?
No. And that's kind of, so just pay attention when you're mounting scopes. If you're used to mounting just one type of scope, when you switch lanes, read up on it or ask someone, because, that's the difference between having a pretty ugly scope when you take it off. Whether your rings are lapped properly or not, you are going to collapse the tube a bit.
Yeah.
Right? You can.
So what's your most common job at in the gun shop?
That's pretty heavy. So general smithing wise, glass bedding, and then just general tune-ups, triggers, glass bedding, and then for more of the custom work, muzzle brakes are a huge thing.
Right.
Guys are realizing that you can still have a bigger gun if you tame it down. It really turns over a new leaf, and you can shoot it better. You can see your bullets in flight. So that's a huge one as well. That's probably the most common machining job you do is muzzle brakes. I mean, lots and lots and lots.
I have muzzle brakes even on 223.
Yeah.
just because I enjoy it.
No jump.
No, absolutely none.
Hearing protection should be worn regardless.
Always.
Whether you're shooting your gun. I mean, sure, we're all deaf, and we can bear a bit more loudness, but we're not doing ourselves any good. So muzzle brake will always, because if you shoot one without it, you'll remember it forever. And you will always just wear those necklaces, pop them in.
Yep.
With antler restrictions and everything else that occurs in my hunting style, I have hours of time to pull off a shot realistically.
And I mean, you can remove that muzzle brake if you want and put the cap on and go hunting.
Yep.
You're just shooting it once. But if you're going to shoot that gun a lot and get familiar with it, you know, a properly installed muzzle brake does not change the point of impact. Doesn't change anything other than how it's recoiling.
Yeah. Generally, you'll be more accurate. Just tracks nicer. You might see a small shift in impact, and that's witchery. Whether they do it or not, there's no equation. You know, I've built weighted caps exactly to the same specs as the muzzle brakes. I've done every conceivable thing, and you can never completely tune out that point of impact shift from some barrels.
On some barrels,
yeah.
It's just like fluting a barrel.
Yep.
Sometimes it makes it shoot that much better, and other times it doesn't, and sometimes it ruins it.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen almost no ruinings. I've seen accuracy that never changes.
Yep.
And then I've seen barrels that it's just wow.
Yeah.
You know, you take a barrel, like usually it's the long, skinny barrels that really show the benefit of the fluting.
Right.
The heavier they are, I mean, it becomes a weight to cooling to this, you know, just aesthetics game. But some of the longer, skinnier barrels, I pretty much flute all of those.
Yeah.
It seems like it just puts them into a sleepier state. They're not as whippy. And generally, I believe, and I've seen the accuracy potential from it and the results of taking barrels that are mediocre shooters,
right,
proven ammo, just flute them, and seeing that accuracy drop, whether it be a quarter minute or 3/8 of a minute, and sometimes a full minute. You know, you can really get some outstanding changes.
Yeah, and it's very, very aesthetically pleasing as well.
Yeah, it looks cool.
What's your favorite thing to do with a gun?
Well, favorite thing to do with a gun. I'd say let's put that into my favorite gun to build. I probably love building ultralight rifles and, you know, reinventing components and just striving for that ultimate ultralight rifle. Those really kind of tickle my fancy. You know, if I had to pick a job that, you know, it's like, all right, I get some of the guys that are like, just here it is, build me whatever you want, but I want it light. Okay. And you're in charge. Okay. Those are pretty awesome projects. I like the machining part of things. I mean, whether it's fluting a bolt or putting a muzzle brake on or chambering a barrel, the metal work is always intriguing.
Right.
And then I don't know. I've refinished upwards of 6,000 like Teflon, powder coat, Cerakote jobs. I mean, I've lost count. But some of the finish work and the paint jobs and things like that at the end, that's what really pulls the whole project together.
Well, I never tell you I never tell you how to paint any of my rifles. I might say, well, brownish, okay? And yeah. and you never disappoint. I mean, I have some of the most spectacular custom paint jobs on my rifles. I really like the Macmillan stock. So yes. I mean, I have a big believer in synthetics, and I just like how rigid they are. I like how they fit. That HTG is my favorite stock of Macmillan. I like how they fit. I like that if I'm wanting to put a bipod on them, I don't have to worry. I can preload that bipod, and when I'm shooting in that, I don't have to worry about that stock moving or warping or anything else.
Oh yeah,
it's not like a lot of the Tupperware that's out there today. So I've always thought that your stock work was spectacular, and your inletting in that. I mean, it's always been first class, but.
And when you're dealing with good components, and when you can have the advantage of painting, a lot of people think, oh, these stocks are inletted super good, they're just a drop in. But the best part about having to paint them at the end is when you glass them and do the finish work, those edges are just clean cut, sanded flush. You don't have to work around a pre-existing paint job. You can do perfect body work. Your bottom metal is basically formed into it. You sand right onto the bottom metal, right? You get all your edges clean, tight, so that when you pull it out, I mean, it really is a casting, a perfect casting.
Well, so if you're going to build a rifle today,
yep,
what are the components that you would choose?
Well, for me, I still like a A turn bolt gun. Like I'm a bolt action guy for sure. I
Well,
mean,
obviously, yeah. I mean, you like shooting the distance, that kind of stuff.
the accuracy potential and everything else. Um, Extractor type. My preference is like a mini 16 style. I like a push feed action. Controlled round feed is great. It's more of a dangerous game one, but I like to be able to single shot easy, no interruptions. Kind of the top makers I like. I like a 2-lug bolt, spiral fluted, so it's nice and slick. Nitrided bolt. I always lay more onto the lighter style action, so a little bit slabbed, lightweight aluminum shroud handle combination, and I like an interchangeable handle or knob.
Right.
You can run a longer knob for on the bench, nice tidy knob for in your scabbard or on your horse, so it's tight. The versatility is there, right?
Right.
So the hard operation, I like kind of like a 700 clone, but integral lug if I can. I like to run tally type mounts, the lightweight mounts, so 8x40 screw holes. I like 2-piece mounts so I have more access into my loading area just for a visual. Is my gun up? Yep. Just tip it, look in there. Mini 16 style extractors, like that type of extractor. They're just bomb proof, right?
Right.
Proven tough. And then it just basically goes, I'm more of a short action, those type of calibers. I like the efficiency and just having a shorter weapon overall. I like to run, a shorter barrel or as short as possible to burn the powder that's needed.
Yeah.
Like I say, I'm all mountain motivated, right? So, the 28-inch Sendero contour type barrels, I mean, that's just not my game.
So, if you were to what make would the action be?
It would be a split. Like Defiance is probably one of my favorite because you can really choose a pile of options.
Yeah.
And you don't pay extra for that.
Right.
Which is great. So you can take their action, get the extra deep spiral flute, the aluminum handle, the slabbed action, and it's the same as if you just got the round receiver with the non-fluted bolt. You get to pick and choose and really customize it to the build.
I believe that's what I have. That's exact action I have in my 260 AI, right?
Your 260 AI is that way. My most commonly used gun I have is on a Defiance short action.
Yeah.
Rebel action that's been, modified to my liking.
Okay, so bottom metal then?
Bottom metal, I still rock hinge floor plates. I'm not a huge detachable mag fan.
No.
Unless I'm varmint hunting, where I know I'm going to be traveling.
Yeah.
So it's easy to take it out and move along. In the mountains, I load my magazine. I never hunt with a loaded firearm. I can stay there all week. I'm never anywhere near anything motorized, so I don't have to worry about unloading and reloading.
Exactly.
And I can't lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a good one.
Yeah. So just a Pacific Tool and Gauge or a Macmillan bottom metal, Obendorf style with the in-bow trigger release or mag release. They're just nice and tidy and easy to get at.
There's nothing like being in big bear country with a single shot.
Yeah.
So okay, that's the bottom metal. Barrel.
Barrels, I could throw them all in a bucket because of the thousands of barrels that have rolled through the shop and things like that. Your top performers, they're out there. Your benchmarks, your Kriegers, your Liljas, Hearts, those barrels there are fantastic, and you're never making a bad choice. Go with your gut or go with what you've had experience with, and the results will be there. I mean, your biggest is cut rifled or buttoned.
Okay.
And that's your only, real argument. These guys are making fantastic pipes. And Canadian content now too, like KS Arms in Edmonton, beautiful cut rifled barrels, fantastic. Yeah. Put them against anything.
Yeah. Cool. So stocks,
I'm with you. I like an Edge Tech from Macmillan, carbon outer, edge fill middle. I generally take a little bit slimmer design. You like the HDGs, which are a little fatter through there. I like a little narrower in the wrist. I do like the HDGs width of forend when you're running, say, bipods and things like that. It's a lot nicer. Just a little bit more heft. But it only adds like 1.5 ounces to go to that bigger forend, if you can believe that. That's it. So it's worth it.
Anything else then on that gun?
Yeah, and then
The trigger?
full deck, yeah, triggers, really, really backing the Trigger Tech triggers.
Oh, I don't believe I have one of those.
Oh, well, you should. It's really nice for the end user. They're
Yeah.
actually detent adjustable externally, so you don't actually have to pop the stock off to adjust it. Jewels are the same way. You can access your weight adjustment outside of the gun without having to take the stock off. I mean, Timney, the safety design is fantastic. Adjustability is great, but you do have to pop it off to just, say, go from cold weather setting to a bench setting, right? You
Right.
pop your stock off. So some guys are apprehensive about taking their guns apart. I don't know why, but they're just worried about wrecking something.
Well,
guess.
I think it's because a lot of people don't understand everything that goes into the technology of a gun, and it's kind of that mojo thing. You don't want to screw with what's working.
Yeah, like it's working so good, I'm not touching it. Yeah, I get a lot of that actually, and you can tell because it's usually by the time they come in for a service, there's 4 years of pine needles buried in there. But yeah, the trigger techs are really nice. They're frictionless, zero creep type triggers. So if you ever shot a Jewel type where when they break, it's just snap. There's absolutely nothing else happens after the fact. So they're really nice. Positive design, and then a Canadian company as well. And they're coming. They really made a good splash. It's been a couple years of using them, and I'm very happy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you shoot thousands upon thousands of rounds a year. You guys have a stock mounting and rifle accuracy truing or guaranteeing the accuracy of the rifle, and that you handle all these cartridges. What cartridges with you when you go to the mountains?
I've got pretty much my 7.8 Ackley improved has been the workhorse.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. I'm right now. I'm torn. I ordered up a Magnum bolt for my Defiance Action. I have a 6.5 barrel sitting around my bench, but like the typical mechanic, I'm the last on the list by far.
Yeah.
And I'm going to build a 6.5 PRC as my big gun.
Ooh, I'm interested in those.
Yes.
I'm
and
interested.
Because my gun, it will be 100% switch barrel component gun.
Oh, okay.
So all I do is pull my bolt. My magazine box is going to be converted to what's called a Wyatt center feed mag box. So it's a 3-inch mag box, same as my 7.8 Ackley. All I do is pull my bolt out. My barrels are all indexed, integral. So I just pop my barrel on and change my bolt, and I have my 6.5 PRC.
I've got four 6.5s. So I guess I got room for one more.
That's right. You got 5 fingers. Right?
Yeah.
So what it does is gives me all the benefits of the 6.5 by 284, for instance.
Yep.
I'm getting lazy. I like factory ammo now.
I tell you what.
So it's amazing that Hornady ELDX in that ammo, and I built lots of them now. I mean, I just hand the guy the gun and be like, oh yeah, there's another 1/2-inch gun. You know, it's fantastic.
That precision hunter that Hornady has, if they'd had it years ago, I'd never be a reloader. Like, I mean, I can't improve on it.
No.
And that's saying a lot because I'm about as anal about the details as it gets, but I just can't improve on it. I mean, it's fabulous ammunition. I think a lot of it's that bullet.
The bullet.
That ELD bullet.
And the thing about it, too, is when they develop these cartridges now, they develop the chamber. And if you notice, when you grab all the different ammos, it's a whole bunch of different lengths. They're seeding that ammunition 10, 15 thou off the land factory.
Yeah.
It's right on the money. They're doing exactly what the best hand loaders would be doing to basically achieve optimal location and performance.
The other thing that's really cool too, though, is that a lot of these cartridges today are designed because people are shooting longer, right? And you just about have to invent a new cartridge to do that, because if somebody were to bring out a big long 25 cal bullet, well, obviously the 25-06 has enough powder to push a big long bullet, but there isn't a single factory rifle that is twisted to shoot a long bullet. You know, So when I was talking with a fellow from Hornady when we were shooting at the FTW, and he said it's just about like, you have to just about bring out a cartridge so that whenever that is the rifle that comes out at the same time for, and that is designed for those big long bullets. And I mean, I've done that with my custom rifles. Like I shoot those big long bullets in them. I'm probably one of the few people that has a 22-250 that shoots an 80 grain bullet. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I had it throated that way. I had it designed for that. And it's got the twist that I need. But you just still got those factory rifles that are twisted for a lot of these classic cartridges. As people are trying to push out those longer ranges with those big bullets, they're not made for them.
No.
And that's where this 6.5 PRC is going to be so cool. I mean, it's going to do what so many of rifles weren't designed for. And I mean, the 6.5 284 was never really much of a factory rifle anyway.
No, and it's a tough one because it's an in-betweener.
Yeah.
It's really a 3150 combined overall length cartridge. It should be that long.
Yeah.
Most actions don't accept it.
Yep.
And shorts don't take it. Longs are too long.
Yep.
You're just giving away all that space. You can't utilize it, right? So it's kind of stuck in the middle.
Exactly.
If you can keep a cartridge under 3 inches and pretty much shoot 3,000 feet per second, you're the winner.
You see, I'm so with you on that 3,000 foot a second. After you go over that, to me, it's wasted velocity. I need a bigger bullet. Because once you start getting over that 3,000 foot a second, you start worrying about barrel life. You're starting to push things so hard. You have to worry about, did you develop a load when it was 60 degrees out and now it's 85 today, and those kind of things. I like to stay under. If I'm from anywhere from 2950 to 3,000, I'm happy as can be. Yeah. I have a 26 nozzler. Well, you know that thing, the cartridge is about that long on it, and it burns a ton of powder. I shoot it. The bullets I shoot in it are the 147 ELDs, and I shoot them at 3,000 foot a second. It could probably push them at 32 or 3,400 or whatever, but I don't want that.
No,
because then I'm just burning barrel and powder, and
you're paying the price sooner or later. Yeah, and the longevity, like you say, the scope takes care of the up and down.
Yep.
So now you have the bullet. The BC isn't going to change whether you drive it faster or slower by any margin.
Nope.
So do what the accuracy node point tells you. And if it's at 3,050 feet per second, stop there.
Absolutely.
Because that's good enough.
Yeah.
And so the PRC, I'm very excited. It's a winner. We also had a pretty good deal going on. We got some exclusives guns built through Christensen Arms. I think we're the only company basically to get a production gun, limited edition, built through them.
Oh, neat.
So we arranged this or whatever and worked with them. And pretty much, we have factory guns chambered in 6.5 PRC rolling off the shelf right now. We're the only people in Canada, period.
Absolutely. That's cool.
Yeah. So, and the performance is just fantastic. That Hornady ammo, when it says 2950 on the box, just took out a gun today. I built for a guy named Scott. It's a left-handed titanium, lightweight, 6.5 PRC, 24-inch barrel, fluted, just a really tidy gun. Gorgeous thing. Hidden trapdoor mag well in the back for additional cartridges like the European ones from NECG. Just fantastic, like over the top. And one of our guys, Keaton, took it out. Standard deviation of 14 feet per second across the board. Factory ammo.
Yeah, factory ammo.
200-yard groups, well under, at an inch. Half ammo weight. The gun isn't even broken. This is just basically a range, run-up, test site. Just go through the paces, right?
Yeah.
Just prove the gun. This is not a 50-cent gun. This was a very, very thought-out custom that had a pile of stuff in it. We want to hand the guy in confidence. So we wanted to get some velocity and a few different things because he had put a Leopold, the new HD, like the VX6s.
Yep.
So it does come with a free turret based on velocities and things like that. So,
right.
So we wanted to get some preliminary velocities just to help him along the line because he's from out of town and he'll be up here working. So we won't have a lot of resources while he's here. He just wanted to get a head start on the game and just prove an ammo. 143 LDXs out of the box, standard deviation of 14, and shoot basically half ammo weight, just poof.
And the numbers are there. When Hornady puts that number on the side of the box, it means something.
Yep.
It's not some dream when they're shooting downhill on the right day or whatever. It means something. I'm astounded at how well it is, and I hope it becomes a standard in the industry, because we don't need more of the usual marketing BS when it comes to the BC of the bullet or the velocity or any of that. You just need some reality to deal with.
The lie detectors are out there now. I mean, if your BC isn't up to par, it's caught. You know,
especially where we're shooting turret scopes or ballistic scopes and all that. That all counts on the BC of that bullet, and you know, if you got starting velocity in the BC and that, you should be able to. On paper, you can figure it all the way out to 1,000 yards. You go and shoot it, and all of a sudden it's missing by 6-7 inches. Well, something ain't right.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, and sometimes it's the design of the bullets. Like some of the programs, like the G1 or whatever it is, might not take into account, say, a Barnes bullet with all the cannelures. I mean, those are microscopic turbulence, right?
Yeah.
So I see it over time that their BCs are lower than advertised when we shoot them to long distances, right?
Yeah.
So, when it all comes down to it, when you're building turrets and when you're working with things like that, you want to input that data. I mean, it's fine to have a slightly lower BC, but you got to account for it before you start building permanent attachments to your firearm.
I believe that if you're going to shoot distances in that, you shoot a cup and core bullet. I mean, you need to have that perfect mating with the rifling. You need that bullet to be obturating, which is actually because of the velocity and the pressure, and that it actually swells to fill that rifling. That doesn't happen with a solid bullet, whether it's a gilding metal bullet or solid copper bullet. That just doesn't happen.
No, and you're always worried about the performance at the long range.
Yeah.
And the opening or the potential failures that when you're pushing the envelope, right?
Yeah.
Cup core bullets, they're going to work for you. I know that.
Well, I see we have ran an hour and a half here like nothing, and I think we might as well wrap this up. Your puppy wants to be fed, I'll bet.
Yeah.
Tell everybody how they can reach you.
Well, you can reach me many different ways. Best way, we have a phone number. It's 250-782-2111, and that gets you to our main, obviously, during business hours, that gets you in there.
Yep.
We're online at corlanesportinggoods.com, and you pretty much, we have a lot of our gunsmithing services on there now. Our used inventory is updated every week. It's a fantastic site. We're developing it all the time and spending a lot of attention on that so you can see our ever-changing inventory. Aaron's on Facebook and on Instagram. I mean, you can follow us there. It's fantastic. We're really posting a lot more things and doing a lot more interactions, so you get to see a lot of the new products out all the time.
That's exciting, and I love visiting with you. I love talking guns, and I probably need a new 6.5 PRC now.
You probably will.
Thank you, buddy.
You betcha, Rich.